We'll be discussing a bunch of topics today from the NCAA championships, both men and women, in the Basketball Hall of Fame. I'm your host, Devin.
And I'm Isaiah.
And let's get right into it. First up today, we got Baylor women basketball, 40-0. The first team in college basketball history to win 40 games in a season without losing a game. What are your thoughts about the game?
Well, I mean, Baylor showed from the outset of the season that they were on a mission.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, they lost to Texas A&M in the Final Four, and they understood that their team had to come out and set a tone. Brittany Garner showed that she was the best player in the country from day one.
By far.
And her team, they just complimented her so well. Odyssey Sims set a tone as a point guard. I mean, the whole program itself positioned itself to win. They had some opposition that really gave them some trouble, but it wasn't necessarily the hardest thing for them to overcome.
And with all 5 of their starters coming back for next season, including Brittany Griner, I look for them to have another undefeated season. So look out for Baylor women basketball. They're looking to dominate the sport. It used to be Tennessee and UConn for years and years, but now Baylor's on the rise.
Looking at Brittany Garner's performance last night, I mean, you could tell that she really had something to prove. She had 26 points, 5 blocks, 13 rebounds. I mean, she clearly showed that she wanted that championship.
Do you feel she's one of the greatest women's players to ever play, or do you feel like it's too early?
Well, honestly, from her first day in Baylor, well, even before that, when she was a YouTube sensation dunking,
in high school, yeah,
they understood that she was going to be a dominant force. At Baylor, she's clearly a defensive anchor, and she's someone who imposes her will on opposing teams. So she's very dominant. If she can put up another elite performance next year, she will definitely be one of the greats.
Great, I agree. And now in men's basketball, we have the Kentucky Wildcats. Congratulations, Blake Blue Nation. You finally got the championship that you guys long waited for. First championship since 1998 when Tubby Smith led them there. Led by most outstanding player Anthony Davis. Kentucky beat Kansas in a thrilling game. Wasn't the best game, but it was an entertaining game. They beat Kansas. And now, what is your thoughts on Kentucky?
Well, I feel like John Calipari, he had his time. His time finally came. He's often before this game, he was often regarded as the best coach never to win an NCAA championship.
Which you don't want.
So, with that in mind, he always was regarded as a coach who can recruit and get the best out of his young talent. But it was always a question of can you build a championship around a team that wasn't necessarily going to stay together for a long period of time. Obviously, during his time at Kentucky, he's had a young nucleus from John Wall to DeMarcus Cousins to Davis now. He has Michael Gilchrist. I mean, Michael K. Gilchrist. I mean, there's so many. There's such a young nucleus that he's always been around. For him to finally win a championship the way that he had in dominant fashion, it was a long time coming.
Now, what are your thoughts on Anthony Davis? Anthony Davis was the most outstanding player in the Final Four championship game. He only had 6 points and 1 for 10 shooting, but he contributed in other ways, including 15 rebounds, 6 blocks, and that doesn't even include the other shots he altered and changed at the rim.
Right.
Scouts are comparing him to the next Kevin Garnett. I kind of see where they're going with that. A big body who can shoot, a great defensive player, and it has a great motor. Do you think those comparisons to Kevin Garnett are warranted, or do you think there's another player he should be compared to? Chris Bosh? Who else? What do you think?
Well, I mean, he's such a stat stuffer outside of the normal stats like points, assists. He can affect the game without even scoring. As you can see, he has 6 points, but he alters shots. He positioned his teammates to get open shots. I mean, there was a comparison made during the NCAA championship game against Kansas where they compared him to a Bill Russell, someone who has intangibles that contribute to other things outside of scoring but are so important. And I think that in the NBA, he'll be a great talent. He'll be someone who you can build a defensive defensive scheme around, someone who you can build around. And in the NBA, it takes time, as we saw with other defensive players during that era, like Patrick Ewing. But he became a very good offensive player.
Right.
So, and we've seen that his skills. He showed an ability to handle the ball. He can pass, and he has a good shooting form, so he can eventually learn how to shoot. I think that he can become an offensive player, but his foundation is already set as a defensive player.
Great, I agree. Also, I think if he goes to a team like the Bobcats or the New Orleans Hornets, which will be ironic because the Final Four was played in New Orleans. You know? I think he will change that franchise around. Now, what do you think about this one and done rule? As we mentioned earlier, Kentucky won the national championship with a rare freshman, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, Marcus Teague, Kyle Whittinger, and Anthony Davis, all were big contributions to the team.
Right.
Now, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of people said that you wouldn't be able to win with one and dones, but now it's been done already.
Right.
Now it's proven it can be done. Do you think David Stern should change that one and done rule, or do you think he should add 2 more years to the college, make it mandatory for 3 years, or do you think you should be able to go in to the NBA right after high school?
Here's the thing. There was a time during the NBA where when you went to college, it was almost guaranteed that you stayed for 3 years, got the best out of your potential at college, you pushed for an NCAA championship, and you went to the NBA after 3 years. You had some players who stayed for 4. But then there was a wave, there was a time, I would say in the early 90s, once Kevin Garnett reopened that door for high school. Prior to that, Moses Malone came out of high school, so there wasn't a precedent. There wasn't a lot of precedent. But then when Kevin Garnett opened the door, you saw the Kobe Bryants, the Tracy McGrady's, the Jermaine O'Neals, LeBron James. All of those players prior to LeBron James, it took them time to learn the game and become elite players in their own right. LeBron James was the first high school player, aside from Moses Malone, to come in the NBA and really dominate the way that he did. So when you think about it in that regard, a lot of high school players saw those examples, and even though there were high school players who came during that era and who weren't successful, they saw the elite players as being successful, and that gave them the thought process that they can do it. So let's think about the players who came out of high school and weren't necessarily successful right away. You have the what's his name? Tyson Chandler, Eddie Curry,
Jermaine O'Neal.
I mean, he was successful,
but it took him a while to become successful.
I'm talking about the complete bust.
Kwame
Brown, Eddie. I mean, it was about a 3-year period where everyone was coming out of high school.
Right.
So I think David Stern saw that and said, we have to do something about the skill that we have, the product that we have. The game is being diluted, and we have to try to channel it in a way to both contribute to NCAA basketball and NBA basketball. But here's the problem. Now that you have this one and done rule, a lot of players understand that they're not going to college for a long period of time. They understand that, okay, I'm going to go to school for a year, which really means I'm going to go to class for 1 semester, and then I'm going to go to the NBA. When you look at Calipari's track record with one and dones, Derrick Rose, Tyreke Evans, now possibly Anthony Davis. I mean, Terrence Jones was considered a one and done after a while, but he stayed for another year.
Due to the lockout.
Kevin Durant, one and done. Carmelo Anthony, one and done. A lot of these players have examples that show, okay, I can go put in work in college for a year, really a semester, put myself on a platform where everyone can see me. I'm going to go to a big college, and the scouts are going to see my potential. When I look at players like Michael Beasley, for example, at Kansas State, he was a beast. He was a beast. 20 games. He put Kansas State back on the map as a program. You look at him in the NBA, he's a great player, but he's a great talent, I would say. But would you say that he's an elite player? Would you say that he had the ability to come
He has the ability, but he hasn't maximized his potential yet.
Right. Here's the thing I will also say is that when you think about one and dones, the one thing we know about sports is that when opportunity knocks, you have to take it. You have to take it. So a lot of these players have worked so hard to put themselves in a position to provide for their families and live out their dreams. They're not gonna wait that extra 2 years to ultimately bring down their stock. You know what I mean? When you think about players like Scottie Reynolds, for example, after his sophomore year, he was considered to be one of the best guards in the country. But after a while, his stock went down, and now look, he wasn't drafted in the NBA. He's playing overseas. So players have that in mind, and they say, if the door is open, I'm going to take it and do the best I can in the NBA.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would just like to add, basketball is basically a children's game.
Right.
So let's say if David Stern institutes this 3-year rule, what if guys like LeBron James had to go to, let's say if he went to Ohio State for 3 years and he got hurt during his sophomore year and he could never play basketball again. You're talking about one of the maybe the greatest talent in basketball history, not player talent. And if he got hurt his sophomore, he may not never have he wouldn't have had a chance to play basketball again. So you're talking about a guy who would have lost out on millions of dollars just because of a rule. If you could defend your country at 18, why can't you play basketball at 18?
Here's the thing, right? You brought up great points as far as with the potential to lose out on talent in case of an injury or such as that. But what about the players who aren't necessarily honing in on their skills? John Calipari, a notorious coach for one and dones, has been opposed to one and dones, but he works with the situation he has. He's always said that the NBA is a man's game.
Yeah.
It's not a boy's game. So when you go in and you're 19 years old and you're used to being the man for so much of your basketball career up until that point, how do you adjust in that manner? There's so many players who coming out and one and dones, they're inconsistent. Like John Wall, for example, he's a great talent and you see the potential that he has. But ultimately, he has games where he's not necessarily the most consistent. His shooting percentage is not efficient for a point guard, and he doesn't necessarily know the best situations to shoot or get his teammates involved. He does have games where he has high volume assists, but his scoring is down. Then he has games where his scoring is up, but his assists is down.
Okay.
So, I mean, you have to learn those situations. In college, you can learn that. I mean, there has to be a balance act. You see what I'm saying?
Well, I understand what you're saying, but let's say if a guy stays all 4 years, usually guys who stay in college all 4 years don't really pan out in the pros. Not in this day and age. You look at guys like Shavlik Randolph, Brian Zuback, Lance Thomas, Sean May stayed for 3 years, not 4, but he hasn't panned out. Rashawn McCants, these are guys who stayed, learned from great coaching, and they still are not playing up to their abilities. So I'm saying, if you have the talent to go in the league, when you're a high school kid, you should be able to go. Now it's the scouts and the GMs and the organization's job to pick which ones can make an immediate impact and which ones can't. I think these high school kids have suffered because a lot of GMs, Michael Jordan, not to pick on Jordan, but Michael Jordan made that Kwame Brown pick with the first pick, which was a weak draft, but he's arguably the greatest bust as a number 1 pick of all time. So I think when David Stern saw that, he realized that the NBA was being watered down.
Right.
But my thing is, the GMs don't have to pick them. They're not forced to pick these guys. They can go another route. And if there's nobody you don't like, you can always trade the pick for a future pick, things like that. So my thing is, these kids shouldn't suffer for grown men mistakes. I think if these kids are talented enough to play, they should play. And if they're not, then they should go to college. But don't force them to go to college when they're not really getting an education anyway. You're just wasting time. And now the game is being corrupted. John Calipari has 2 Final Fours vacated because of this one and done rule. Even though the one and done rule was instituted in 1996 with Marcus Camby, he still was like most likely a one and done because he was that elite of a talent. He led his team. He led a UMass team to the national championship where they lost to Kentucky, which is ironic. But with Derrick Rose, had he been able to go to the league as an 18-year-old,
he probably would have went.
Yeah. And now Memphis, as a school, is suffering for that. Now they don't have no Final Four appearances because of this one and done rule, which leads to more scandals and things like that. So now I don't think that's fair for the institution to suffer because of a one and done rule.
But do you blame that on Calipari, or do you blame that on the state of NCAA basketball? A lot of players understand that when they go to college, they're preparing for the NBA. It's not even a preparation for a career outside of basketball. They're not preparing for life after basketball. They're preparing for another opportunity to play basketball. Yeah. So certain programs, they understand that they're only going to have a player for this amount of time, and they prepare for another player. It's like a revolving door.
So you think the league should institute a 3-year rule?
Not 3. I would say it should be an option. Either the NBDL or if you go to college, you go for 2 years.
So at least you get a 1 full year of school. Okay.
You know, just to pursue a degree, pursue other ventures outside of basketball. Because like you said, a lot of these players are not panning out the way that they thought they were because of the demands of the league or just the certain circumstances or the situation of a team you're in. Right. You know? And I think that they should use the NBDL, the NBA Developmental League, if you guys didn't know. I think that they should implement it, using it towards the younger talent instead of washed up players like Mike James or Antoine Walker. Or if you draft a player to a team, you know how they have players overseas who stay there for 2 years and then come back over. Use that for players who from America or even a player overseas who goes to college. You know, if they draft him, you keep his rights, but develop him.
Develop him, right.
Yeah.
Well, with the one and done rule now, with the Brandon Jennings situation, you think that's going to happen more where a guy just goes overseas, gets paid to play basketball, develop a little bit, and then comes to the NBA?
Well,
or do you think that's a bad idea?
I mean, it was a unique situation. I don't think that a lot of players will do that because it's a professional league. A lot of players are not ready. For professional at any state. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that was a unique situation. If it was gonna happen right away, you would have seen the wave right after. I don't think.
Well, you had Jeremy Tyler who dropped out of high school to play overseas, and that hasn't panned out. Now I think you should at least have a high school diploma to play basketball in the NBA. I think that should be mandatory. What do you think?
I mean, but then again, you're ranking certain educational status. So
yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Right.
Speaking of David Stern, a lot of people think this NBA season is a watered down season.
Right.
The reason being is there's a lot of injuries to certain contending teams. Derrick Rose with the Chicago Bulls has been out over 10 games with a groin injury that he's re-aggravated due to the condensed season.
Not to mention previous injuries early in the season with turf toe, ankles, and groin again.
And guys like Jeremy Lin has been injured. Jeremy Lin injured his knee because he wasn't. I think he injured the knee because he wasn't used to playing full regular minutes in the NBA. Not to mention the condensed season. So now you have 4 games in 5 nights, 3 games in a row, 5 and 7 days, 7 and 10 days, things like that. Now, what do you think about the NBA and this season so far? Do you think an injury would determine the NBA championship?
I think injuries can affect any situation, any team, and any season. But I think this year is most evident because of how condensed the season is. Teams have to really monitor their players' minutes, and there's not a lot of practice time to get used to your players. So a lot of times, players are just making plays rather than running plays. So you're placing your body in a position to stretch its limits at a quicker pace than usual, because the league felt that they had to reach that Christmas deadline, because Christmas is a big platform for the NBA. These condensed games have affected many teams outside of contention. When you think about the Memphis Grizzlies, Zach Randolph, he was injured very early in the season. He missed almost the entire season up until this point. He just recently came back. Derrick Rose has missed over 15 games already in a lockout year. Dwayne Wade has already missed 11 games.
Eric Gordon missed the entire season with a knee injury.
You know what I mean? And now we see with the Knicks, who are an elite franchise in the NBA, they're affected because Jeremy Lin, who prior to this, he did not have NBA experience. This is basically his rookie season. When he came on the scene, he played about 4 games in a week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was to a point where he hadn't played that much basketball in a 2-week stretch, and he's doing that every month now. He's not used to that. So that puts pressure on his knees. That puts pressure on the Knicks because they don't really have a point guard situation.
Right.
You know, so then you look at the flip side. Now they're saying that the Knicks organization hid the injury from the Knicks fans because they had to reach a playoff deadline for tickets.
What do you think about that? If you guys don't know, Jeremy Lin knew he was going to get the surgery during the weekend, but the Knicks decided to withhold that information until after March 28th, which is the deadline for season ticket holders to buy all 4 rounds of the playoffs, the first 3 rounds, and the finals. They waited to after that to announce that he wouldn't be back for 6 weeks due to surgery. Me personally, I don't think this is a big story, but I see why some people are offended by this story with the shady business. My thing is this: the Knicks, they have one of the most loyal fan bases in the world. I feel like season ticket holders were gonna buy all 4 rounds anyway, regardless whether he was playing or not. Now, don't get me wrong, Jeremy Lin will help ticket sales. Like, he helped MSG stock go right back up to the roof. He even helped Time Warner get MSG back during that whole dispute. So I understand why people are saying that, but I still feel like since they are one of the most loyal fan bases in the world, their games will still sell out. I mean, they were selling out games where they weren't even making the playoffs. They were bottom. They was winning 23 games a year. They were still selling out, still top 10 in attendance. What do you think? Do you think it's a big deal, or do you think it's really not that big of a deal?
I think because of the specific franchise that it is, it doesn't affect things the way that it should. It's a big story, but that's only if it was a different franchise. The Knicks are a staple in the NBA. They're one of the top 5 franchises of the NBA just off recognition alone, name value alone. So with that being said, the Knicks franchise doesn't really need to hide anything because they're gonna sell out regardless.
Right. Anyway.
But here's the thing: when you talk about Jeremy Lin's impact outside of basketball, monetary value, just the globalization of the Knicks brand, it's already global. But he opens up more avenues. He contributes to other things outside of basketball. That's why it's a big story. That's why Jeremy Lin is considered this icon the way that he is, because of the type of impact that he showed during the short period that he played. Let's think about this outside of just this injury. The potential of him to come back next year. You know what I mean? If another team sees that Jeremy Lin is up on the market, they're going to get him too. Not just to play, but to sell tickets. If he was to go to the Golden State Warriors, I guarantee you there would be top 5 in the league in attendance. If he was to go to the Washington Wizards, anywhere he goes, he's going to be an icon. He's going to help that franchise outside of basketball. He's going to help them business-wise. So that's why this is a big story. The money, the fans, it's not just basketball. If it wasn't the Knicks franchise.
Which is ironic because as soon as Amari, with his back problems, they announced that immediately.
Yes.
So I understand where you're coming with that, but my thing is this. It will slow down a little bit, but it wouldn't have the huge effect as far as ticket sales. As far as concerned. This is the playoffs. The Knicks only made the playoffs twice in the last 10 years. So every time they make the playoffs, I feel like
it's going to be big
anyway. But I understand where you're going with this. Now, maybe the casual fans might be a little bit upset. Like the fans who came after Jeremy Lin, a lot of casual fans are at the Garden now. They might be upset, but there's still millions and millions of diehard fans
who still follow the Knicks.
Yes.
Here's another point. They say that Jeremy Lin, if he had the surgery, and they said that his recovery time will be on point to a second round. A second round matchup. If the Knicks were able to make it to the second round, he'll return then. Do you think that also was the reason why the Knicks withheld? Because they understood that there's a possibility that the Knicks won't make it as far as the finals or something like that. You know what I mean? So they have to make sure they buy out everything.
Everything, right?
Yeah.
First of all, the Knicks are making the second round, people.
All right.
Even if when they make it to the second round and he comes back, he still needs time to adjust, get his conditioning back, and get used to the game. Even if you are conditioned, it's a difference between regular condition and NBA condition.
Right.
So basically, he's still out for the season, in my concern, because the playoffs, you don't have time to be getting the iron out, getting the kinks out. This is the playoffs.
Yeah.
You're here to win or go home, as they say on TNT. I still feel like they knew he was going to be out for the season. They held it, which is a little shady, but again, it's not a big deal. So they can sell those tickets to the casual fans. But the only point I was making is, even if the casual fans don't buy it, you have fans like me who will still buy the tickets. Me, Spike Lee, Chris Rock, Woody Allen. They will still come to the games regardless because they were there before the world knew who Jeremy Lin was.
Yeah. That just goes to show you the fan base that they have, with the fact that, you know, they stuck with them through losing years when they were bottom feeders. But their merchandise still sold in the top 5 every year. They're in New York City, a market that's a brand in itself. You know what I mean? It's bigger than just basketball when it comes to the Knicks. So it doesn't really affect it in that regard. But the fact that let's take away from the Knicks. Let's put them with like the Clippers or something. Let's say that was to happen with Blake Griffin
or Chris Paul.
You know what I mean? It would be a way bigger story. You know, there would be investigation. You know, but because of the market that the Knicks are in, because of the business that they're in, outside of just the sport, it's not as big of a deal as it should be.
Now, the Knicks have vehemently denied this report, of course. So we don't. It's speculated. This is not a real fact. Frank Isola speculated this, so it's not necessarily a fact that they actually did this. Now, if Derrick Rose, let's say if this happened to Derrick Rose,
right?
Chicago Bulls is a good fan base.
Wait,
we have a caller.
You on with the winning circuit?
What's up?
Oh, hey, this is the first time I heard about Jeremy Lin. So they're out for the season?
He's out for 6 weeks, which is basically the season, because there's 4 weeks left in the regular season.
Oh man. But how did they injure it? You know?
He injured his knee, which is basically due to he's not used to playing this much minutes. So over time, his knee, he had a little swelling in his knee, and he had knee tendonitis.
Yeah.
Oh, that's terrible. So that's like a disease or like a...
No. I mean, it just comes with the wear and tear of the NBA.
Oh.
Especially when you're not used to playing this many minutes in a season, in a condensed NBA season.
Also, they said that he tore his meniscus.
Meniscus, right?
He might need extra time for rehab and things of that nature.
Oh, so Amari and others are okay?
Amari's he has a back injury, where he's out 2 to 4 weeks. So he might be back in time for the playoffs, but again, he's gonna need time to adjust, get his conditioning back for the playoffs.
Not to mention get reacquainted with his teammates who he hasn't played with in a while.
Yeah. Well, I wonder how the coach is feeling right now. I mean, yeah, they must be under pressure.
I mean, like we mentioned earlier, the Knicks are not the only team bitten with the injury bug. You have teams like Chicago Bulls, Miami Heat, LeBron D. Wade missed games, Zebo missed games. You have other teams that's been bitten with the injury bug. So I think it's a chance for every coach this season, with this condensed season, to do the best they can with the limited amount of time that they have.
Right.
Yeah. Personally, I think the Knicks. You know, I mean, this could also open up, you know, opportunities for the, you know, other players in the Knicks to, you know, strengthen. You know.
Right.
Yeah. The superstars, they're awesome, but you know, the whole players make the game. So yeah, I think everyone has a shot to, you know, just use what they can, you know, what they got to work with, and go from there.
Right.
So yeah, it's good you guys talked about it, because I didn't hear about it online. But thanks a lot. I'll keep watching.
No problem, man. That's why we're here on the winning circuit. We're here to inform you people.
Thanks for the analysis, by the way.
Now, as I mentioned before the caller, what if this happened to the Chicago Bulls? You mentioned the Clippers, but the Clippers are like a bottom-dwelling team, like you mentioned. If this happened to the Bulls, who had Jordan, Scottie Pippen, what if that happened to the Bulls? Do you think it'll still be a bigger story, or do you think it'll be a little small story?
it's all subject to time and interpretation. Honestly, the Bulls organization, they're because of the type of team that they already had, they're winning without Derrick Rose. So it wouldn't be a reason to hide it for a while. If they understood that he wasn't going to be there for an extended period of time, they have a strong team who can contend without him. They understand that they can't win a championship without him.
Yeah.
But
they can win a first round without him.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't think it would be the same. But if we would have a team like the Knicks, for example, who on a basketball level, they need certain players that they have. And if some of those players are injured and they have to hide it to sell tickets, they might do that. You know? So it's different with certain teams like the Bulls. They already have a strong team without their franchise player, but their franchise player takes them over the hump.
And I'm glad you mentioned that they're winning without Derrick Rose, because the 5 games the Knicks have been out, Jeremy Lin has been out, the Knicks have been 3-2. But the 2 losses have been greatly like generalized that they really need Jeremy Lin, because Baron Davis is really not used to playing these many minutes because he's been hurt. He came back in the middle of the season from the herniated disc, and he's older now. He's 35. So he can't be dependent on to play all these minutes. I think with the absence of Jeremy Lin, it's really showing how the Knicks really need a point guard. Tony Douglas is not a natural point guard. J.R. Smith, Iman Shumpert, these are more combo guards. With Jeremy Lin being out, you're now seeing that the Knicks have a lack of point guard. Baron Davis is good for a bench player. He should be able to come in 15 minutes with the second unit, and you'll have a great second unit. Now without Jeremy Lin, he's the starter now, and now he looks gassed. If you watch Tuesday's game, the Knicks had a 15-point lead going in the fourth quarter, and they couldn't hold that lead because it was the Carmelo Anthony show. Everybody looked gassed with all the injuries and stuff, so they was doing a lot of isolation without any ball movement. So I think with these injuries, it's really showing that the Knicks are in danger. I still think they're going to make the playoffs to make some noise, but they can miss the playoffs if they don't get their act together.
Yeah, especially at this time in the season, going into the playoffs. The playoffs start after April 26th. So you want to get rolling. You want to get in the rhythm. The Knicks clearly this season haven't fully been in the rhythm because of
various
things, injuries, Jeremy Lin's anticipation, and everything that has come with that, and then Carmelo Anthony coming back, trying to mold that in with D'Antoni, then D'Antoni getting fired. There's so many events that have happened that have disrupted the Knicks' rhythm. So they really, if they want to make a dent this season and build on in the future, they have to figure out a way to get in the rhythm and ultimately prepare for the future. They're not going to win the championship this season.
I don't know.
Honestly, they're not going to win a championship this season. But if they find a way to get a good matchup against the Miami Heat or play a team like the Chicago Bulls and make some noise, a strong 7-game series, a strong 6-game series with all games contested, they can show their fans that they're building towards the future. Jeremy Lin could possibly be that point guard in the future if he gets healthy. But the Knicks have to find a way throughout their franchise to build on something. In the years of the 90s, when they had Patrick Ewing, when they had Oakley, when they had Anthony Mason, John Starks, these players were a nucleus for 5 to 7 years, with Jeff Van Gundy coming in, transitioning after Pat Riley, and building around Sprewell and Allen Houston and Marcus Camby and Chris Childs. These nucleuses lasted for a number of years, which helped the Knicks contend for a decade. But after Patrick Ewing's departure, the Knicks have had an influx of coaches, influx of point guards. They've never had a consistent bench, and now that they have a consistent superstar, they don't have those type of players that can help them build for the future. They have to figure out a way to build towards a championship, and it doesn't take 1 or 2 years. It takes 4 to 5 years, as we saw with.
Unless you're the Miami Heat and you could just get 3 free agents out.
Yeah.
But
let's move on.
Before we move on, I'm sorry. The Knicks don't have a lot of time to get their act together. They have a tough 4-game stretch coming up. They play Orlando, who they just beat handily, so you know they're going to be out for revenge. They have 2 games against the Chicago Bulls back to back. Let's see if Derrick Rose plays, and then they play Milwaukee. So we'll see what happens after this 4-game stretch.
That Milwaukee matchup
crucial.
is really big, really big.
Now the big news of last week was the Basketball Hall of Fame. If you guys didn't know, the Basketball Hall of Fame had a great class this year, led by Hall of Famers, newly inducted Hall of Famers, Reggie Miller, Ralph Sampson, and Don Nelson. Now, I don't want to be a party pooper, but I don't know why these 3 guys are in the Hall of Fame. I don't know why Reggie Miller's in the Hall of Fame. I don't know why Don Nelson in the Hall of Fame, and I definitely don't know why Ralph Sampson's in the Hall of Fame. Well, no, I know why Ralph Sampson's in the Hall of Fame. During his college career, 3-time National Player of the Year at Virginia. So I knew why he's in.
Right.
But why is Don Nelson, Reggie Miller in? In my opinion, I don't think these guys should be Hall of Famers. I just don't. I'm not being a hater. A lot of people say I have Knicks bias. It's not being biased. I'm just keeping it real. We keep it here on the Renner Circuit. I don't think these guys should be Hall of Famers. But what do you think? You think these guys are Hall of Famers?
I think for Reggie Miller's career, he was consistent. He's widely regarded as one of the clutchest players in NBA history, and he's one of the greatest shooters that we've honestly ever seen. Prior to last year, he led the league. He led the NBA in 3-pointers made and 3-point field goal percentage. So, when you think about that, Reggie Miller's ability to put Indiana, not necessarily a basketball town in the NBA, to put them on a map. It took some time from 1987 up until he retired, but for a period in the 90s, he clearly had Indiana as a contender in the East to battle against the New York Knicks, to battle against the Chicago Bulls. And ultimately, he had some winning experiences. He was very clutch, and he had some moments against the Knicks that really made him a household name. I felt like he wasn't the best scorer, but he figured out ways to score. He was very efficient. He shot 47%. He scored over 25,000 points. So you see the consistency year in and year out. And his clutch gene is what really put him over the top. I felt like he is a Hall of Fame.
Now,
I feel like he is.
As a man, Skip Bayless, anchor on ESPN First and 10, he said the Basketball Hall of Fame is coming from the Basketball Hall of Fame to the Basketball Hall of Very Good. And I think this is the case here. I mean, yes, Reggie Miller shot 47% from the field, which is better than Kobe, by the way.
Who's consistently 45 to 46%.
Who's a definite Hall of Famer.
Right.
He only averaged 18 points. And he never was really one of the greatest guards or the greatest players during his time. He only made the All-NBA team 2 times, the 3rd team. He only made 5 All-Star appearances, which is understandable because he played behind the greatest shooting guard that ever played basketball, Michael Jordan. But still, even that's the case, you should still have more than 5 All-Star appearances. Wouldn't the coaches put you in if you thought you was a Hall of Fame player?
We got a caller.
Welcome to the Winner Circle. What's up?
Yes, sir. How y'all doing tonight?
What's up, man?
What's going on?
All right, we're talking about Reggie Miller and his Hall of Fame credentials. Do you feel like he's a Hall of Famer? What's your name?
My name is Rob.
All right, Rob, do you feel like Reggie Miller is a definite Hall of Famer? Because I don't think he's in the Hall of Fame. I don't think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
Of course, Reggie Miller's a Hall of Famer. He's just not a first. Well, yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. He's a Hall of Famer, no doubt. You know, he's probably one of the greatest shooting guards around. You know.
I don't even think he's a top 10 shooting guard of all time.
Are you kidding me?
He's not top 10.
Why not?
Because it's a bunch of shooting guards that's better. Ray Allen, Allen Iverson, Kobe, Jerry West.
But they're not eligible for the Hall of Fame yet.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that he's not a top 10 shooting guard of all time.
But you have to deal with the situation at hand. Honestly.
Hold on. You think this guy's not a top 10 shooting guard?
Not of all time. No.
Do you know what this guy did when he played?
He only averaged 18 points for his season. For his career.
How many? See, everybody gets caught in the numbers. Okay, if you want to go by numbers, how many times did he shoot the ball a game?
He averaged 17 shots for his career, which is good. He's efficient, 47% from the field.
How many shots a game do Kobe average?
True, but probably about 1 million. But Kobe
Okay.
got
So
rings.
Matter of fact, I'm sorry. Let's go with Allen Iverson. How many shots a game did he average?
That's your favorite. How many shots a game he averaged? That's your boy.
Well, I mean, Allen averaged 23, but he's a much more prolific scorer.
Exactly.
Both of the players that you named
Are prolific
are
scorers.
prolific scorers, so
Right.
they have to shoot the ball.
No, see what the mistake that you guys are making is, okay, you guys are calling these guys scorers. Okay, I'm not saying they can't score. Like Charles Barkley said, any knucklehead can score.
Right.
My point to you is, this guy scored, but he didn't shoot the ball 20, 30 times a game in order to do so. Okay, as a career, he might have only averaged 18 points. That's it. Hey, listen, we all know he could have averaged much more than that if he wanted to.
Is that the case? With most prolific scorers at the guard position, they've shown an ability to handle the ball, to take the ball off the dribble and create their own shots as well as shots for their teammates. Reggie Miller, as a shooting guard, has to have someone create shots for him. He has the ability to run off screens, create different avenues to get the ball off the ball. But when you have when you have to get the ball and handle and create for other people, he doesn't have that ability.
Okay, so that's a knock on him. That's one knock on him. Okay, but listen, this guy, he's one of the greatest. He's probably the greatest three-point shooter in NBA history.
Nah, what about Ray Allen?
Okay, Ray Allen has made more than him, but you can't tell me he did it at a better clip than Reggie. You know what I mean? Now, Reggie deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. There's no question about it. But the Basketball Hall of Fame is kind of watered down anyway, you know.
That was exactly my point. That's what I was saying before, is becoming the Hall of Very Good. So I understand why he's in, but if my Hall of Fame, he's not in my Hall of Fame. But I understand why he's in. But like you said, though, the NBA Hall of Fame, well, it's basically the Basketball Hall of Fame.
That's what it
which
is.
Which is why it's being watered down. They need to separate that from a college Basketball Hall of Fame to the NBA Basketball Hall of Fame. What do you think?
I think you're correct on that. You know, you should have your college basketball, and you should separate that from the program. You know, but they don't do that. I just think they don't make a big deal out of all of that like other sports do.
Right.
I think that's the problem. You know what I mean?
And you bring up a good point as far as with other sports, because with other sports, it's much harder to make the Hall of Fame. For example, with the NFL.
You have Chris Carter, the second greatest NFL receiver of all time, and he's now in the Hall of Fame. So I think the Basketball Hall of Fame should be more like the NFL Hall of Fame, which is much harder to get. It's a lot of great players in the NFL who are not Hall of Famers. And what do you think about that?
Yeah, that is definitely the case. You know what I mean? There's a NFL Hall of Fame is like sometimes it's really ridiculous. You know, there's not one punter.
Yeah,
in the NFL Hall of Fame, not one. I mean, I know people think that punters don't do anything. Hey, listen, if this guy, if the opposite, if you're on your own 20, and this guy can you on the other 20, that's a hell of a kick. You know what I mean? You just saved your team, that many yards, from them scoring. I'm not saying a punter is the greatest thing ever, but I'm just saying hey, listen.
He plays a very important role.
Exactly. They come in handy. So, it's a lot of great NFL players that's not in the Hall of Fame. To me, their criteria is sometimes a little ridiculous. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Chris Carter definitely deserves to be in a Hall of Fame. With no question.
Okay, let's get back to this Reggie Miller thing. Last year, he wasn't even a Hall of Fame finalist. So you're telling me this guy should be going from a not a Hall of Fame finalist, so he should definitely be in the Hall of Fame? I don't understand the logic in that.
I mean, he's one of those.
Last year, 2011 Hall of Fame, he wasn't even in finalist for the 2011 Hall of Fame. But this year, he got inducted in the Hall of Fame. So my thing is, how can you go from not even being a finalist to being inducted to the Hall of Fame? Isn't it like it should be like a little step-by-step process? What I'm saying right now?
I mean,
no question about it. You're definitely right about it.
Let's go back to this. Reggie Miller is a top 10 shooting guard. Where would you place him in shooting guards? Because I honestly don't think he's top 10. But where do you place him? Hello, you still there?
It looks like our caller is breaking up. Are you still there, caller? Rob, you still there? All right,
call back if you come back. Call back.
203-345-0103. I mean, top 10 shooting guards. I can't say he's top 10 shooting guards with the talent that we've seen after Reggie Miller. I mean, Dwayne Wade, Allen Iverson, Kobe Bryant. I mean, there's so many players that are ahead of him that there's no way that I can see him being top 10. I mean, you think about Michael Jordan. You got Michael Jordan, Kobe, Dwayne Wade, Allen Iverson. That's 4 right there.
Jerry West.
Hold up, we got another caller. You on with the winning circuit? What's up?
Oh, hey, you guys are talking about the Hall of Fame, but it's like, is there like limited space to be in the Hall of Fame?
No. Which is why I think it's becoming watered down. I feel like they feel like they need to play a certain amount of people every time, even if they really, really don't deserve to be in.
Well, let's break down the requirements. You have to play. You have to play. Then when you retire, as a player, as a professional player, you have to retire, and then be out of the game for 5 years, professionally.
Did Miller qualify for that?
Yes, he did. He retired after the 2005 NBA season, and it's now 2012. So it's been 6 years.
Yeah, I respect, how you feel about, him not deserving Hall of Fame. But on the flip side, he kind of does, because, these people, it's a sport, but they give it all, they kind of deserve a little bit of recognition, but yeah, that's how I think about it, it's not a bad thing if someone's put on a Hall of Fame. In fact, that's kind of like a good thing. Even though someone might deserve it more, they're still playing basically, or maybe they haven't been retired as long. Don't you think?
Right. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to get into the Hall of Fame. I'm saying he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame.
Whatsoever. You don't think he should never make the Hall of Fame?
It's guys that's not in the Hall of Fame that should be in before Reggie Miller. Bernard King, Kevin Johnson, even Mitch Richmond is a better player than Reggie Miller. These guys
are they greater players than him? Have they accomplished more winning wise?
Bernard King
didn't win.
Neither did Reggie Miller.
But Reggie Miller had his team in contention on a consistent basis. 6 Eastern Conference Finals, 1 NBA Finals. You know what I'm saying? And in 1998, they were one of the teams that were considered to knock off the Chicago Bulls.
But they didn't do it, though.
They didn't do it. But when you look at players like Patrick Ewing, Patrick Ewing has been to 2 finals. He didn't bring a championship to New York, and during his period as a center in the East, he was never the best center in the NBA. But he was a great player. Right. He contributed, and he accomplished so much. Hold on, we got a caller. You on with the winning circuit? What's up?
What's up, man?
Hey, how you doing?
What's up? You paying attention to what we saying? What you think about Reggie Miller being in the Hall of Fame?
I'm calling. Reggie Miller should definitely be in the Hall of Fame because it's about impact on the game of basketball.
Right.
And he had if you ask any basketball fan if you mention Reggie Miller, every basketball fan knows who that is.
Right. You're right. So what's up? What's on your mind, man?
I'm just saying, Reggie Miller definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
So how do you feel that the selection process is as far as with pro basketball Hall of Fame? Do you feel like they should separate it as far as with college and NBA, or do you feel like it should remain as the way it is?
I believe it should remain as one. Basketball is basketball, like every level, high school, college, professional. They all play a part. They're all connected.
As a fan who has watched basketball for a long period of time, as I would assume you say you know about Reggie Miller, Would you consider him a top-tier shooting guard during his time, or was he just a regular good player?
I would consider him a top 10. Like, he changed the game. Like, he ran around the whole time. Like, if you look at Richard Hamilton, like, he's basically trying to be like Reggie Miller. He just runs off screens. That's how he plays. So he has impacted the game, and he has impacted players that play in this day and age.
Right.
Also, he played for his team, like just one team for like 17 years. My numbers may be off, but he played for one team for a while, like in just Indiana. He was the face of that team, the franchise player. Like,
But my thing is, I don't think you should hold that for Hall of Fame credentials, because I think now with guys like LeBron, Chris Bosh, Chris Paul, they all going to different teams to win. He stayed, which is admirable, but I still don't think that's enough to get in the Hall of Fame. This guy made his highest MVP finish was 13th.
But that goes along with what I think. I think that you don't necessarily have to be the best player you don't always have to be the best player in the NBA to still get in the Basketball Hall of Fame. I think Reggie's accomplishments alone, over 25,000 points. That shows longevity. That shows a level of greatness that you have to maintain year in and year out. 25,000 points. He's been the leader in three-point shooting prior to Ray Allen breaking his record last year. You know what I mean? That's over an 18-year period of shooting perimeter shots. And the clutch moments that he's put in our minds as NBA fans, as NBA analysts, as people who observe the game, that deserves merit. That deserves to be recognized in the Pro Basketball Hall of Fame. Regardless of how quick he got in or how late he would have got in if he didn't get in right away, he still should have been in there. There's players who do deserve to be in there, like Bernard King. But they have to wait their turn. It takes time. Thank you for calling in, by the way. What's your name?
My name is Brian.
Brian, as you look at the game itself and you look at how it's evolving, do you see that there are other players who might necessarily play for one team for a long period of time as Reggie did?
I don't see that happening because, like, the game is changing. It's more business-like than about the playing. Like, personally, I feel like players these days don't play as hard as the players, like, during, like, the early 90s. Like, taking games off, not playing full seasons, like, towards the end of the season, like, resting. Like, players used to play, like, the full 82-game schedule. Like, that's what they did. Now it's all about their brand, their marketing, which is good for, like, their business side because they're thinking about what they're doing outside of basketball. But, like, just for the game, like, it's not just focused on the game anymore. It's all about everything else.
So, my last question. What do you feel about Don Nelson and Ralph Sampson getting to the Hall of Fame? Do you think those guys, I know you think Reggie Miller should be in, but do you think Don Nelson, Ralph Sampson should be in the Hall of Fame also?
I believe so. They affected the game. Like, Don Nelson was a great coach. Like,
I mean, he has a lot of wins, but he never even went to the finals. He has a lot of playoff failures. 2007, I believe, when they lost to the Golden State Warriors. I think he wasn't the coach, but like
he was the coach of the Warriors.
Yeah, like after that, I mean, I didn't even feel. I mean, he has like limited experience, like highlights. He had one highlight. After that, what did he really do? You know?
Well, it's a lot of the Basketball Hall of Fame goes on achievements and accomplishments, and I feel like as we show a clip of Wilt Chamberlain, Wilt Chamberlain, outside of just his impact alone, the numbers he put up helped him get into the Hall of Fame. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when you look at Don Nelson, when you look at his numbers, he's the all-time winningest coach in NBA history, regardless of his accomplishments in the playoffs or lack thereof. He never had good defensive teams, but he's known as an offensive genius. He's recognized as an offensive genius. So when voters think about that, when fans think about that, when you think of Don Nelson, you think of a fast-paced offense. You think of the winningest coach of all time as far as with professional games. So when you think about that and you think about the ability of achievement, how it impacts the game, I feel like he deserves to be in it. We want to thank you for calling in, by the way, Brian. You should continue to keep watching the winning circuit. Thanks.
All right, no problem.
All right, have a good one, man.
I mean, it's so much that goes into the game of basketball.
Mm-hmm.
As we spoke about earlier, you know, it's not separated. So
Right.
you have to be. Last year's inductee, Chris Mullin, he was never an elite player. When I say elite, by the way, I mean like top 5, top 10 player.
Right.
But he had a great number of years in the NBA. During a 5-year stretch with the Warriors, he averaged 25 points from 1988 to 1993.
Mm-hmm.
That's great numbers. And his numbers at St. John's, being the great player that he was, putting St. John's back on the map, during the Big East basketball era. I mean, that is an accomplishment in itself. He's recognized as a player who impacted the game, not just pro basketball, but for college basketball. So there will be questionable players
like Ralph Sampson. So you saying Ralph Sampson is in because he's a 3-time National Player of the Year instead of what he did in the NBA.
Exactly. He didn't. For me as a fan, I don't feel like he impacted the NBA as much as he did with college basketball.
Right. So,
I mean, as we wrap up, it's going to be debate.
It's always debate.
Yeah, def.
But my thing is, like, if you got to debate about it, then you probably shouldn't be in. My thing is Hall of Fame. As soon as you say your name, bam, you in the Hall of Fame. Jordan, bam. Magic, bam. Larry Bird, bam.
I mean, but these are transcendent players.
So maybe we should separate the Hall of Fame from transcendent to you just got in to you got in because of college. I mean, hey.
I mean, that might be what we have to do, because honestly, there's players that are playing right now that are better than Reggie Miller.
Right.
But you can't take away from the
Reggie
accomplishment.
Miller. It's not Reggie Miller's fault that people are better than him.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, that's just the way the game goes sometimes.
And another news, did you hear about this guy who scored 113 points in a basketball game? Will Chamberlain moved over. We got a new basketball scoring record. 113 points in a basketball game. What do you think about that?
I mean, honestly, it's hard to put into words what I think about it. I mean, and mind you, this guy averages 8 points for the season.
So he was hot.
He took 69 shots, made 40. He took 59 threes.
In a basketball game.
I mean, the way the game has expanded since the years of Wilt Chamberlain, late 50s, early 60s, I mean, that whole era of basketball, when basketball was center dominated, I mean, as we wrap up, I mean, it's hard to really put into words what we hear.
Yeah.
We didn't see footage yet, but what I will say is this: it does show that the game is expanding, and if one person can do it overseas, then somebody can do it in NBA. I don't think that the organization would allow a player to shoot that many shots.
Right. He should at least get a basketball tryout in the NBA. If you could score 113 points, you can at least score 5 points in the NBA. As we wrap up the show, we'd like to thank our callers today. We had a few disagreements on basketball, Hall of Fame credentials. I like you guys to tune into the Winning Circuit each and every week, Wednesday, 7 to 8. We're going to have a good one. Thank you again for the callers. Tune into the Winning Circuit, and we out. Peace.